It's not blurry. It's the position of the camera. It's because of the chair. Oh, just yeah, that's good day. Welcome once again to the class for mathematics. From last week, we have started a series of taking past questions from the examinations to see exactly how those questions are aligned and formed based on all the topics that we have done so far. Of course, for all those topics that we have done, ranging from indices to logarithms to simultaneous equations to three-dimensional shapes, two-dimensional shapes, as well as statistics, one major core feature is that they will always have formulas, they will always have techniques to which their solutions should be done. And we have also been able to check through all of these topics one after the other. Now it's time to now dig deep into different questions from the past questions, of course, and see exactly how questions can be set based on these topics. We started last week, we are going to be continuing today. As always, if you've missed any of our classes, make sure to go through our recordings that are available to the premium users. So you can always chat the administrator to get access. So without wasting too much time, let us begin. We begin today's class with a question on number bases, right? Now, of course, for number bases, we have the binary base, which is common, that's the base 2, as well as the decimal base, which is also common, that's base 10. However, we also have different other kinds of base of operations, not, of course, without including the base 8, which is usually called the octa base, and then we have the base 9 as well. In this case, we are to create this relationship between base 8 and base 9, and then find the value of r. Now, when dealing with bases different from base 10, the very first thing to do is to first and foremost convert back to base 10. Now, the easiest way for converting a term to base 10 when using a different base is to use the process of multiplication. What do I mean? For instance, when you have 6r7 to base 8, the first thing you do is how many digits do you have? 3 digits. Then you itemize them from right to left. Digit 0, 1, 2. Then you now expand them by multiplication. The first digit, which is 6, is in the index of 2. That will be 6 times 8 raised to power 2, plus the next one, r, times 8 raised to power 1, plus the next one, 7 times 8 raised to power 0. So creating this expansion will give you a value in base 10 altogether. Now this is going to be 6 times 64, that's 8 times 8. Let's start with a very, very basic number. For instance, if you have 1 in base 2, right? What is it equivalent to in base 10? What is 1 in base 2 equivalent to in base 10? This is equivalent to 3 in base 10. How do I know this? Because I can convert 1 to base 2 as 1 times 2 raised to power 1 plus 1 times 2 raised to power 0. This is going to be 1 times 2, that's 2, plus 1 times 2 raised to power 0. 2 raised to power 0 is what? 1, Abi? So that will be 1 times 1. 2 plus 1 is going to be 3 in base 10. This is conversion from another base to base 10. Are we together? Now, how do you now convert to base 2? That's the question. You don't count with the value of the base, right? You count the index from 0 upwards. 8 was the base now. So if you are going from base 10 to another base, if going to base 10 is by process of multiplication, then going to another base from base 10 will be a process of division. So 310 is equivalent to 1 to base 2. Why? Because if I divide 3 by 2, 2 will go in 3 how many times? Once. Remember what? 1. Abi? Now 2 will go in 1 0 times. It's not possible, Abi? Remember 1. And then you read the value upwards. So that's the same thing we are using for this question. So in the case of this question, we have the variable r in the middle, right? So it still does not change how you carry out your representation. You start from the right 0, 1, 2. In terms of the base in this case is base 8. So this will be 6 times 8 raised to power 2 plus r times 8 raised to power 1 plus 7 times 8 raised to power 0. And then 8 raised to power 2 is 64, yeah? Plus r times 8, that's 8r, plus 8 raised to power 0 is 1, right? 7 times 1 remains 7. Now 6 times 64, what do you have? 6 times 4 is 24, right? 6 times 2 is 36, plus 2, that's 384. Are we good? And then plus 7 plus 8r. So this is going to give you 391 plus 8r, right? Don't forget that all of this now is in base 10. Similarly, for 511 to base 9, you would have 5 because it's 0, 1, 2. You have 5 times 9 raised to power 2 plus 1 times 9 raised to power 1 plus 1 times 9 raised to power 0, right? So this is going to be 5 times 9 times 9 is 81, yeah? Plus 1 times 9 is 9 plus 1, right? And 5 times 81 is going to be what? 405 plus 10, yeah? Which is going to give us 465 base 10, right? And so from here, we will now equate them together. Are we good? We'll now equate them together. And what do? 6r7 to base 8 has been converted to 391 plus 8r in base 10, Abi. And then 511 in base 9 has been converted to 465. So for me, it's just about making R sub of the formula. So you now have 8R is equal to, bring this to the other side, you have 465 minus 391. 8R will be equal to 51, that's 4, right? Then you have 7. And then from here, if you divide by 8, what would your value be? Right? So you would have 74 divided by 8, that would be 9.25. Abi? Or you said 9 rule number 1 over 4. You decide to like so. R will be equal to 9.25. And don't forget that this value of R is in base 10. So it's now left for you if you now say, okay, do I want to convert this value of R to base 8? That's left for you to now decide to do so. Of course, you indicate this is R in base 10. If you want to write what? Yes. Is that like what? This 6R7 to base 8. This value is in base 10. So if you want to put the value of R here, you convert this value in base 10 to base 8. If the question says find R in base 8, then you'd have to compulsorily convert this. Just find R, right? This is find R. Now, R, because you know that those values are equivalent values. For instance, if I have 3 in base 10, it's equivalent to having 1, 1 to base 2. It's still the same thing. So at the end of the day, whether I use or whether I utilize R in base 10 or I utilize R in base 8 or I even use it in base 9, are we together? I'm still dealing with the same value in equivalent basis. If the question now specifies the base it wants, then you convert. So this one now I'm taking to base 10 because there is no specific indication of where it should go to. So does that make sense to you? So that's that. Computation mistake here. 405 plus 10 is 415. And I wrote 465 and you did not care to think about it. That's why you're here now. So you have, this is going to be 424, right? So this is 3 base 10. So that's that. Let's move on. I don't think there's any other issues there as well. So this time around, so of course, if it's 3 base 10, it means that if I convert out to base 2, for instance, it will be 1, 1. Yeah. So always, if the question does not require any specific base, you don't need to stress yourself on saying, I want to use conversion. But if the question says find out in base 8, and then you have to convert that guy. And funny enough, 3 in base 10 is still 3 in base 8. Do you know? Maybe I just cleaned conversion now. If you are converting from base 10 to another base, you use long division now. So if you are converting to base 8, that means you are divided by 8. Abi? And this will be 0 remainder 3. Abi? So it means that 3 in base 10 is still equal to 3 in base 8. Do you get? In fact, 3 in base 10 is equal to 3 in base 9, which is equal to 3 in base 8, equal to 3 in base 7, equal to 3 in base 6, equal to 3 in base 5, equal to 3 in base 4. Do you know why? Do you know why? Because the value 3 is lesser than the basis. When the value you are converting is lesser than the base, it will be the same across all of those bases that are greater than it. It's from base 10. I'm not talking about this one. So from base 10, I have 3 in base 10. If it's 4 base 10, 4 base 10 is equal to 4 base 9, 4 base 8, 4 base 7, 4 base 6, 4 base 5. That's where to stop. Do you get? Because those are the values greater than 4. If you have 8 base 10, 8 base 10 is equal to 8 base 9. But once you get to a base equal to the value or lesser, it changes. So for instance, now, if I want to convert 3 in base 10 to base 3, it will not be 3 in base 3 again. Do you know why? Because in a base of operation, the digits in that base cannot be equal to the base value. Do you understand? So for instance, if I'm in base 2, I can only have 0 and 1. If I'm in base 3, I can only have 0, 1, and 2. Do you get? So if I do 3 in base 10, by the time I get to base 3, you see that I don't have base 3 here. By the time I get to base 3, it is going to be equal to 1, 0 in base 3. How do I know that? I've done division in my head. Because if I divide 3 by 3, I have 1 remainder 0. Abi? Then 3 again, I have 0 remainder 1. So if I read it downwards, so you get. So that is something you have to pay attention to. So it's like a trick. So you then think about it, and that's why the question didn't even bother specify which base of operation, because even if you want to do it to base 8 or base 9, you still get the same thing, right? But even if that's not the case, if you get a value larger, always your first default is to leave it in base 10. Okay, let's leave that on the board for whoever wants to, right? If you're on TikTok and you're just joining us, we are taking past question reviews for mathematics to discuss all the topics that we have previously talked about over the course of our classes from November. So if, of course, the recording of those classes are also available, so you can send us a DM and gain access to those classes so that you can refresh your knowledge of the classes while we go over the questions. So let us take the second question of the day. And make sure to share the live to your friends so that they also get to join in the class. So here we go. At what rate will the interest on 400 naira increase to 24 naira in 3 years, reckoning in simple interest? Right. So this is a simple interest question. Identify what you are looking for. At what rate? So you are looking for the rate of growth of the simple interest, right? Now, what is the interest itself? The interest itself is 24 naira, right? And the time of increase of that interest is 3 years. What is the capital, or what is the principal? The principal is 400 naira, right? Now, don't forget the formula for simple interest. Simple interest tells you what? Simple interest is equal to the principal times the rate, which is in percentages, Abi, times time. It's not over, it's times. Now, because the rate is in percentages, right? You know, when you refer to a percentage number, you have to divide by 100. You get? So the over 100 in the formula is because of the rate that is in percentages. So you have to be very, very conversant about that, because sometimes, and this is very, very important, sometimes the rate can be given to you in its decimal form after conversion to percentages. Are we together? For instance, if in the traditional sense, if we say the rate is 3%, right? What do? We just put R to be equal to 3, Abi, because it's over 100. But what if I tell you the rate is 0.03? If I say the rate is 0.03, that means that I have converted this rate value into its decimal form. So I've already done 3 over 100. So in that form, the formula for the simple interest will now be PLT. There won't be over 100 any longer because the rate has been converted. But then, if I now say 0.03 and I put percent, then I divide by 100. Do you understand? So the presence of the percent sign in front of my rate, if the rate is given in the question, means that I have to divide by 100. That's the default, right? Eh? No, in this case, we are looking for the rate. So whatever we are finding will be in percentages. Do you get? Whatever we are finding is going to be in percentages. Once you use this formula and you make out of the formula, your value is going to be in percentages. Do you get? Because look at it. If we make out of the formula here, we have done something of the formula. R will be equal to 100. Abi, no, let's not start with the 100. We have simple interest divided by principal times time, Abi, times 100. This is what the formula is going to become. Abi now. So the fact that we are multiplying by 100 converts it to percentages. Do you get? So whenever you use the formula like this, your rate is going to be in percentages. But if, for adventure, you are looking for something else and the rate was given to you in the question, then the rate, whenever it carries the percentages, you use over 100. But if the rate is given to you as a decimal and the percentage sign is not present, it means that it has been converted originally. So you don't divide by 100, right? So it's very important to keep that in mind. Also, the default for the time is always in years. The time is always in years, which means if you are given the value of your time in months, for instance, you have to convert it to a year's value. For instance, if the question has said increase to 24 naira in 36 months, it's not that you now put 36 for till. You have to convert that 36 months to what? To years. 12 months make a year. So the default for time is always in years. Okay, so let's put all those values together. We have the formula for R. Let's put our values in. So the rate of interest now be the simple interest, which is 24, divided by the principal, which is 400, times the time, which is 3 years, times 100, right? And so from here, if we do some simple cuttings, because we want to limit as much calculator we need to use. So if we divide by 4, here we have 6, here we have 100, here we have 2, here we have 1, here we have 1, here we have 50, right? So what does that mean? It means the rate is what? 2%. In lowest terms, without having to even use a calculator. Are we good? So what that tells you is that at a growth of 2%, right, a principal of 400 would have added 24 naira more in 3 years. So it means that in 3 years, the total worth of the money would now be 424 naira in 3 years. So that is that for that. Let us pick yet another question. Okay, so for question 3 now, okay, so now we have that if P ratio Q is 2/3 ratio 5/6, and Q ratio R is 3/4 ratio 1/2, find P ratio Q ratio R, right? That's the question we have to deal with. Now, again, one major thing is while dealing with ratios, you must know when to take a total and you must know when to take the difference of terms. In this case, right, in this case, we can take a total because first and foremost in the two ratios given, Q is present, right? So it means that whatever value of Q we can obtain from this ratio will definitely be equal to the value of Q we can obtain from this ratio. As such, it means that if we can take a total for the first ratio and take a total for the second ratio and obtain values for Q in both ratios, then we can equate it and find their values, right? So how do we now begin? First and foremost, if we have that P ratio Q is equal to 2/3 ratio 5/6, then it means that if we sum the ratios together, we have 2/3 plus 5/6. The LCM is 6. You'll have this to be 4 plus 5. That will give us 9/6. Right? Clearly, if P plus Q is equal to T, right? That's the total of the addition of these two altogether. If P plus Q is equal to T, then it means that Q will be equal to the ratio of Q, which is 5/6, Abi, divided by the total ratio, which is 9/6, Abi, of what? The total quantity. Are we together? Are we good? It's just like if I say boy B and C shared 10 oranges, right? In the ratio 2:3. Are we together? The total ratio will be 5, Abi. So what boy B will collect will be 2/5 times 10. Abi now? Because you have 10 total oranges. So in this case, if the total value they are sharing is T, then the ratio of Q, what Q will get, will be 5/6, which is the ratio of Q, divided by 9/6, which is the total ratio, times T, which is the total quantity they shared. Does that make sense? So if we put this into simplified terms, we have that 5/9, Abi, if we write it in small times 6/9, Abi, times T. Yeah? So this will give us 5/9 T. Are we good? Does that make sense? We can hold this as our first value, right? So we have ourselves a ratio for Q, right? Based on the first combination. Now, we will check what the second one would also give us. Does that make sense? Now, are we ready? In the second case, Q ratio R is equal to 3/4 ratio 1/2. Abi? Which means the total ratio in this case is going to be 3/4 plus 1/2. Abi? LCM is 4. This will be 3 plus what? 2. This is going to be 5/4. Abi? So the value of Q will be equal to what? Ratio of Q, 3/4, divided by the total ratio, Abi? Times, so let's say if Q plus R is equal to U, for instance, in this case, Abi? Times U. Yeah? So we now have that Q will be equal to what? 3/5 U. Abi? Now, don't forget that this Q, the value of Q will be the same thing in both ratios. Do you get? For instance, let's say I have 3 people, A, B, and C. I have 3 people, A, B, and C. And when I compare what A and B are, okay, I have 3 people, A, B, and C. Yes. When I compare what A and B collected, it's in ratio 2:3. When I compare what A and C collected, it's in ratio 3:5. You know that those ratios still does not affect what A will collect. So even if I compare A and B and I have ratio 2:3, are we together? And I compare A and C and I have ratio 3:5, it does not change what A will collect. Do you understand? I'm just comparing the quantity A collected with the rest. What A is collecting is still the same. Do you get? So let's say let's say we have 20 oranges. Are we together? I have 20 oranges. Now, of those 20 oranges, A collected 4. Are we together? A collected 4. B collected 6. Yeah? And then C collected 10. You know I have 20 oranges, so it's balanced like that. A collected 4, B collected 6, C collected 10. Abi? Now, if I have 4, 6, 10 like that, if I take and compare A to B, right? A has 4 oranges, B has 6 oranges. So the ratio will be 2:3. Now, if I compare A and C, A has 4 oranges, C has 10 oranges. The ratio will be what? 2:5. But then it does not change the fact that A collected 4 oranges. Do you get? So this is the total number of value that Q collected. This is also the total number of value that Q collected here. What it means is that that value and this value have to be what? Have to be equal. Do you get? Because Q collects the same thing regardless of the ratio I'm comparing with others from. Does that make sense? So it means that equation 1 has to be equal to equation 2. Abi? Which would mean that 5/90 has to be equal to 3/5 U. Abi? Now, if we cross multiply, we'll have 25T will be equal to 27U. Are we good? So what does that mean? It means that T/U will be equal to what? 27/25. Abi? Now, T/U will be equal to 27/25. Equations are balanced from the left hand side to right hand side. Abi? So if T/U is equal to 27/25, and of course this is in lowest terms, you can't cut it any longer. What does that immediately tell you? It tells you immediately that T gives you 27, Abi, and U gives you what? 25. It does not matter if it is the original value, because you know this is in lowest terms. So it's possible that in actuality, t could have been double this value. That's 54. But if t is 54, u will have to be what? 50. Do you get? If I increase it again, let's say t becomes 81, then u will have to be 75. Abi? So because it's in lowest terms, I am certain that what t would be, right, would be a multiple of 27. Abi? Then 27 is the lowest possible value t can be. Abi? While 25 is the lowest possible value u can be. Does that make sense? No. If you look at this, you see that we are very good. Because don't forget, and the reason why having the lowest value is very, very enough for us is because don't forget that when we are dealing with ratios, our ratios are always in what? Lowest terms. Abi now, our ratios are always going to be in lowest terms. So if our ratios are always going to be in lowest terms, then it means that this obtains. So from there, what it immediately tells me is that from there, I can easily see something very, very straightforward, that whether I use equation 1 or I use equation 2, Q would be equal to 5 over 9 T, which is equal to 3 over 5 U. And in both cases, if I put the value of T and U, what I'm going to get is 15. Right? If I put the value of T here to be 27, right? 27 over 9 will be 3. Abi? 3 times 5, 15. If I put the value of U here to be 25, 25 over 5 will be 5. Abi? 5 times 3, 15. So you see that it's balanced. From here, I can also find the value of P and R. Abi? P will be equal to, don't forget the ratio of P is what? 2 over 3. Abi? And the total here is 9 over 6. Abi? So it will be 2 over 3 divided by 9 over 6. Abi? Are we good? Times T. But T in this case will be what? 27. Abi? You know, because it's in the total of T. So times T. So this will be, if I what do you call it? Multiply, this will swap. Abi? So it will now become 2 over 3 times 6 over 9 times 27. Abi? Are we good? And from here, what do I immediately have? 3 goes here, you have 2. 9 goes here, you have 3. Abi? 2 times 2 times 3. 12. Abi? That's the value of P. For R, I get R from here. Abi? R will be 1 over 2 divided by what? Total. Abi? That's 5 over 4 times U. Abi? Are we good? So this will be 1 over 2 times 4 over 5 times 25. Abi? 2 here 2, 5 here 5. This will give me what? 10. So you notice what happened? It means that P collected 12, R collected 10, Q collected 15, right? And it's balanced across board. So if I have this, to now summarize this question, if I now have this, then P ratio Q ratio R will now be P, that's 12, Abi, ratio Q, that's 15, Abi, ratio R, that's 10. And it's not possible, I can't go to lowest terms. There's no common divisor any longer. So I can't take this ratio because the ratio is always going to be in lowest terms. So if this was not the lowest term, I'll have to divide by a common value, right? But this is the lowest term, so this is the ratio you have. So there you have the solution to this ratio question. Now, There's something I want to say, which is also very, very important. While we take time to write this, right? It is important to understand how the ratios are aligned. For instance, if there was no common link between these two ratios, it would have been very difficult for us to solve. But because there is a common link between the values, we could put it together, right? Now, that is the first thing I want to talk about. So there has to be a common link between the two issues. The second thing I want to talk about is this method of solution that we have just employed. I'm sure some of you will have been looking at it that this is very long, this is very long. Do I have time to do this in an objective exam? The answer is no. The answer is no. You don't have time to do this. However, this is a question that can come out in the theory exam and an objective exam at the same time. It is sufficient to come out as a theory exam. And when it comes out as a theory exam, this is the full approach you are expected to use to solve it. No shortcuts. And that is why I started with it. Because if I started with the short method, no people will use it like that for your theory exam. And that would be very, very wrong. Remember, when you are dealing with theory exams, whether it's Waec or Neco, always keep in mind that the longer your solutions, the more marks you are liable to get. Now, that does not mean you should be writing nonsense. No. When you write theory exams, write out as much steps as possible while you are solving. By writing more steps, because marking guides for Jamb, marking guides for Waec, Neco usually marks in halves, 1/4, and 1 marks. They don't mark in lump sums, which means that the more lines you write, the more you spread your solutions, the more marks you get. You get marks for labeling equations, you get marks for writing your quantities out, you get marks for spreading your solutions as clear as possible, correctly. So in a theory exam, you cannot afford to write a solution that can originally take you 15 lines in 3 lines just because you know a shorter method. Writing it in 3 lines means you only get 1 marks per line. That's 3 marks. But if you write 15 lines, you get 1 mark per line. That's 15 marks. So you have to be very, very careful. So knowing how to solve it in its full form saves you or allows you get more marks, as many marks as possible. However, when you are not in an objective exam like Jamb, or even when you are in Waec or OBJ part, where your solutions does not matter, what matters is your final result. In those cases, then you are allowed to skip steps. Now, you might be wondering that I can't skip anything here. However, there is a second alternative method to solving this question that allows you approach the answer as quickly as possible. Now, what is that method? So we can take this method 1, or let's say theory method. Because in theory, all your lines matter. Now, when we are dealing with the OBJ method, what do we do? We know that P ratio Q has been given to us to 2/3, 5/6. And I know it's the lowest terms, Abi. So what I first do is I turn it to whole numbers. How do I do that? I multiply all through by 6. If I multiply 2/3 by 6, what will I have? 4. Abi? Basically multiplied by the LCM of the denominator. That's what you are doing. I have 4 ratio 5. Abi? So 2/3 ratio 5/6 is the same thing as 4 ratio 5. I hold on to that. The second one, Q ratio 5. I have 3/4 ratio 1/2. What do? LCM is 4, abi? I multiply 3 by 4. I will now have 3/2. Are we together? That's first step. The next step is, what is common? Q is common, abi? So it means that Q has to be the same in both ratios. So what do? I take the value of Q here and I take the value of Q here. I unify it. Are we together? Which means I multiply the first ratio by a value that will make the value here equal to the value here. Are we together? Now this is 5, this is 3. I can unify it by their LCM. What's the LCM of 5 and 3? 15. Abi? The LCM of 5 and 3 is 15. So to get 15 here, what do? I multiply by 3, abi? So I multiply this ratio by 3. It now becomes what? 4 times 3, 12. 5 times 3, 15. Abi? To unify this, I multiply by 5. 5 times 3 becomes what? 15. 5 times 2 becomes what? 10. Now the value here is equal to the value here. So because the value are now equal, if I now want to do P ratio Q ratio R, because their values have been unified, I cannot combine the two ratios. So I'll now have what? 12 ratio 15 ratio 10. And that's all. Are we together? So you see, in 3 lines, I am done if I am dealing with an objective exam. As simple as this method looks, right, it will not earn you marks in a theory exam. That is why it is important to know how to solve it with the log method that earns you as many marks as possible in theory. But if you are doing an objective exam like Jamb or the objective part of Waec, then knowing this is very, very important. Your trick is, once you have the ratio questions, you unify their values. You look for the variable that's common in both ratios. That is Q. Now, that value that is common, unify the numeric digits of that value in both ratios. In this case, you have 2/3, 5/6. So your first step is turn it to whole number. Now, once you have turned it to whole number, the next step will now be compare it to the other ratio when you have also turned it to whole number. Usually, you might be lucky, they might be unified from the start, but usually they will be giving you different values. You don't have to panic. All you just have to do is, okay, if they are giving you different values, take the value under here, multiply by the top, take the value here, multiply by it. That's short form. Another way is consider the LCM. Considering the LCM, make sure that you are multiplying by the smallest value. Are we together? Because if you pick, for instance, let's say what was here was 15 and what was here was 9, right? If you do 15 times 9, it will be big, right? Because the LCM of 15 and 9 might not be as big as 15 times 9. I don't know. You can try it out. What that means is that by picking the LCM, you are able to pick the smallest possible value that can combine them. In this case, the LCM is 15. Abi? 15 divided by 5 is 3. Abi? Which means you just have to multiply this ratio by 3. Here, 15 divided by 3 is 5, which means you just have to multiply this ratio by 5. This is a very, very important trick. So, OBJ, this is your method to use. You don't have time to be doing all this long form. But theory exam, because it is not the Jamb exam that is the only exam approaching. Immediately after the Jamb exam is the Waec exam, right? So our classes are classes that train you for both Jamb, Waec, Neco, and all your O-level exams at the same time. So we will teach you with methods that apply to all the exams you are writing, whether it is OBJ exam or it is a theory-based exam. That is why it's important to join our classes. As always, as I've always said, these topics has been taught previously in classes, so you can always get access to it. Let's move on to another question. Now, that would be Q4. So let us solve this. If 9x squared plus 6xy plus 4y squared is a factor of 27x cubed minus 8y cubed, find the other factor, right? Find the other factor. So that is all. That's all we have to quickly do on this. Now, to solve this is pretty very straightforward. All you just have to do, or the very first thing you have to look at is, if it's a factor, it means that you'll be able to use it to divide the bigger number with no remainder. Abi? So that's the very first thing. Without wasting time, you can easily take your long division, 9x squared plus 6xy plus 4y squared. And before you start thinking of, won't this be long? You won't have so much to waste your time on, and you'll see in a minute. The reason for this is, if you take this 27x cubed minus 8y cubed, right? The very first thing you notice is, from here to here, if you divide, because you pick the highest ranking variable, Abi, and divide by the highest ranking variable outside, Abi. So you have 27x cubed divided by 9x squared. What would that give you? 3x. Altogether, 3x. Now, if you have 3x, what would you now do? Take this, multiply all of this. So 3x times 9x squared will give you 27x cubed minus 3x times 6xy, Abi, will give you what? 18x squared y, Abi, plus 3x times 4xy, that'll give you 12xy squared. Right? Oh, plus. Sorry. So when you now have this, you subtract altogether. You subtract immediately, you have yourself, this will cancel. You will now have minus 18x squared y. I'm bringing the minus 18x squared y first because I'm comparing it with an x squared outside, Abi. Then I can now have, this will still be minus as well, minus 12xy squared, Abi, minus 8y cubed, right? And then minus 18x squared y divided by 9x squared, what would I have? I would have minus 2y, Abi. So this will now be minus 18x squared y minus 12xy squared minus 8y cubed. And subtracting these two guys gives me 0. Abi? So it means that the other factor is what? 3x minus 2y. Straightforward. Because I'm sure that what I will have is going to be a linear value. The reason why this is certain is because my equation is a cubic equation. No, my expression is a cubic expression, right? A cubic polynomial. You don't call it an equation because there's no equality sign, so it's an expression. And then my factor is a quadratic expression, right? So it means that if I divide, what I will have has to be a linear expression. How do I get minus 18x squared y divided by 9x squared? right? You are not dividing all through. You take the highest ranking variable altogether. Now, X and Y are present, right? But the highest ranking variable I'm choosing depends on what I'm dividing by altogether. I can carry out this long division in a different way. Instead of dividing by X, I can decide to divide by Y. Do you agree with what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, instead of using 27x cubed and 9x squared, I could use minus 8y cubed and 4y squared to divide altogether, and I will still get the same thing. But the major thing is that whatever I'm choosing as my instrument of division, the variable inside must tally with the variable outside, and it has to be the highest form of that variable. Do you get? So the reason why I'm using minus 18x squared y to divide and not minus 12xy squared is because it's inside this one that I have the highest possible value for x, which is x squared. X squared is higher than x. Do you understand what I'm saying? So whatever I'm choosing as my division has to be based on the variable in question. If I decided to start with y, then I'll be dividing by y throughout. So the first one would have been minus 8y cubed divided by 4y squared. Then the next one, I would have to be taking the variable of y. It's not like you will start the division of x, then when you get to the next division, you now decide to say, yeah, let me use y. No, it doesn't work like that. Whatever variable you start with, you must conclude with it. So that is important. All right. So this question is just to tell you that a lot of people believe that long division is something that is too long, that I can't do it. I can't have anything to do with it in an objective exam. No, you can still deal with objective cases for long divisions. In that cases, the number of times you carry out divisions will be very, very small. So it's something you can easily do as well. So our next question. Let's see. So we have the third term of an arithmetic progression is minus 9, and the seventh term is minus 29. Find the 10th term. So what do we do in this instance? Again, this is an arithmetic progression question. We know that the formula for the nth term of an arithmetic progression is simply a plus n minus 1d, right? Now we will now convert this based on the values we have. For the third term, that means n is equal to 3, which means you have a plus 3 minus 1d, and that has to be equal to minus 9. This means that a plus 2d is equal to minus 9. This is equation 1. Then your seventh term gives you a plus 7 minus 1d, and this is going to be minus 29, which means that a plus 6d will be equal to minus 29. This is equation 2. So you now have yourself immediately a simultaneous equation, right? So for the simultaneous equation, you can use elimination method. What does elimination method tell you? It tells you that you pick one of the variables to delete, right? And the major criteria for deleting it is that the coefficient of that variable must be the same in both cases. If it's not the same, you multiply the equations till it becomes the same altogether. So in this case, I am going to be finding A and D both by elimination method to just refresh ourselves. In this case, for A, their variables are the same, Abi. So the next thing I check is that I said their coefficients are the same. So the coefficient is 1 both ways. The next thing I now check is the sign. Is the sign the same? If the sign is the same, whether they are positive or negative, if the sign is the same, I subtract the equations. If the signs are different, I add. Now, in this case, this is plus here, this is also plus here. Signs are the same, so I subtract. In this case, I can do equation 2 minus equation 1, or you can do equation 1 minus equation 2. Anyway, like. So what happens? A minus A cancels out. 6D minus 2D becomes 4D. 20, minus 29 minus 9. That becomes minus 20. Abi? Which immediately tells me that my D is equal to what? Minus 5. Abi? Now, if I want to use elimination method to find the value of A as well, in this case, the coefficient of D is not the same. It is 2 in the first case, it is 6 in the second case. So I have to unify the coefficients first. How do I do that? 6 is obviously greater than 2. Abi? Elimination method. Elimination method. I want to use elimination. Normally, I'm supposed to just take D and substitute it to find the value of A. That's how we would normally do it. But I want to use elimination method in both cases so that you would see what it looks like when the variables are not the same. Eliminating A, we don't have a lot of work to do because the coefficients are already the same. But when we are eliminating D, the coefficients are not the same, right? It is 2 here, it is 6 here. But 6 is a multiple of 2, Abi? So it means that if I take equation 1 and I multiply it by 3, Abi, what would it become? It will become 3A plus 6D is equal to minus 27. Let me call this equation 3. Are we get? So now the coefficient of D is now the same. Now I check the sign. Is the sign the same? Yes. So it means I subtract, Abi. So I can now take equation 3 minus equation 2. Do you get? Now 3A minus A, that's 2A, Abi. 6D minus 6D vanishes, Abi. Minus 27 minus 29. That will be 2, right? So what does that tell me? A is equal to what? 1, right? So if I had gotten the value of D and then I decide to substitute into one of the equations, I'll still have gotten the same thing. If I substitute here now, 2 times minus 5 will be minus 10. Abi? If I cross to the other side, it becomes plus 10. Minus 9 plus 10, 1. So I used elimination method in both cases so that you see what happens when the variable does not have the same coefficient. If it does not have the same coefficient, the very first thing you do is you will unify the coefficient first by multiplying or sometimes dividing the coefficients, right? In this case, I had to multiply the coefficient of the first one by 3 so that it could become the same thing as the second one. Do you understand? So that is how you solve in that question. So it means that the 10th term now, so for finding the 10th term will now be A plus 10 minus 1D, right? And A is 1 plus 9 times D, which is minus 5, which means I have 1 minus 45, which means the 10th term is minus 44, right? So the 10th term needed from the question is minus 44. So for today's class, we have been able to look at questions from a long place. We looked at questions from ratios, from number base, from simple interest, from polynomials, as well as from the concept of sequences and series, right? This shows you that for your exams, whether Jamb, Waec, or Neco, there is going to be a long list of topics that the examiners can choose from. That's why we always start class by picking a lot of topics and treating those topics in detail before we start touching questions, right? Do not worry. All of those topics that have been taught are well recorded because all our live classes are recorded for our students so that they can catch up if they miss any part of the class for whatever reasons whatsoever. What this means is that if you're just joining for the first time today, you still have access to all of these previous topics that we have done so far. All you just have to do is send us a DM, whether on YouTube, TikTok, or on WhatsApp as well, so that you can get instructions as to regards to how you can join the premium class, right? This is where we are going to draw the curtain for today's class. As always, you can always ask questions when necessary, and of course, we will always attend to our students. I am Majid. This is our math class that holds every week. Make sure to also join us for our next class next week as well. Thank you for joining. I will see you in our next live session. Bye, guys.